This episode was produced in cooperation with the ETH Entrepreneur Club, a student organization which aims to inspire, educate, and empower the next generation of entrepreneurs. The ETH Entrepreneur Club holds more than 40 events every year, resulting in an impressive alumni list of successful startups. If you want to keep up with their busy agenda, make sure to give them a follow on social media.
Boys are a lot more daring. So when they have code and they just try it and it's all red, and they're just like, they raise their hand and they're like, hey, it doesn't work. But if you have a girl who you don't have like a good set foundation, you just say, hey, try it out. And she feels a little insecure when it's all red, she doesn't want to try it.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Lara, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's so great to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here.
You're the co-founder and instructor at GirlsCodeToo, a coding academy for girls striving to breach the gender gap in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Before we talk about that, I actually want to start with your personal background. You completed your BS at the UC Irvine in California, and then a few years later, you decided to pursue a Master's of Science at the ETH here in Switzerland. Why was ETH in Switzerland the right choice for you?
So I guess, take a step back
Sure.
and then explain a little bit of the story. So I was working in a traumatic brain injury lab in UCSF, and so UC San Francisco, and a neighboring postdoc, she was working in another lab. She did all her studies at ETH. And so when I was looking for a program, she really told me how it was such an amazing school and they gave you such great support. And so then I kind of searched and I found this program. It's called Neural Systems and Computation. So for me, it was extremely perfect because it was a blend of neuroscience, data science, and electrical engineering. So I kind of get a little hands on everything and then see what I like the best. And so then I ended up here.
That sounds like the perfect school with the perfect program for you at that time.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
But coming from the US to Switzerland, I imagine that's quite a different game or different environment. How was that transition for you? Was that very easy or was it difficult in some parts?
It was at first very, very difficult. So for me, it was getting actually just used to, being in an environment with a different language, constantly in a different language. And my program was in English, so that was good for me. But to be able to not be able to communicate with the people at the grocery store, for example, the transition was extremely hard. But, I had great classmates and a great support system around that made the transition later on a lot easier.
During that time, when the beginning was hard, have you ever thought about going back to the US and say, hey, I tried, that's just not for me?
Yeah, I'd say the first full year, it really took me a year to be like, okay, let me try it and see if I like it. And if not, I just go back. And then, I have my family and friends over there. So we'll see where it goes.
What then helped you to, really arrive in Switzerland?
So I really had all of these, I guess, extracurricular activities, So for example, I would try playing soccer with, random people. Nice. Or taking a pottery class or a dance class and, really trying to just explore myself. And then when I really got to know more and more people, I started to feel, I guess, more centered at home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a good transition period. Yeah. But it takes a lot of work, though. It's not that it just happens. And usually, so when I was growing up, it just happens, right? And for this, it was really, I put myself out there and I really tried to reach out. And that worked.
I want to say you really had to put in the effort to, have these encounters and get to know other people, which can help you to arrive to Switzerland.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your activities. So during your master's, you also became a coding instructor and camp manager at the TechSpark Academy, a Swiss coding academy for kids. Why was the focus on kids? What was your interest behind that?
So it practically, I guess how I view kids in the future is so they are, I guess, the building blocks. And so if you can kind of shift at how they think and or how they perceive themselves and things like that, you can really affect how the second generation is going to be. And so if you instill a lot of, I guess, respect, you teach kids how to respect each other and not to bully and things like that, and have them stand up as a community with each other, then you will then have that later on as they're an adult, right? And then they will create that sense of community and support other people. And so that's kind of the thing about kids.
That's the perfect moment to start, basically, to have an impact.
Yeah. And then, and it's fresh. And then they're fresh in a lot of ideas. And so by having all of those ideas and having them, okay, I can't, for example, if they have an issue with school and then, it's like, okay, well, how do you solve that, for example? And then how do you have them learn and be part of the learning table as well?
Amazing. And then in 2020, you finished your studies to create an association, which was dissolved a year later. Was that a sort of a trial run for GirlsCodeToo?
So a little bit of a yes and no.
Yeah.
And I will tell you a little bit about that story.
Please, yeah.
So the previous association had the same, I guess, belief and mission in mind. And so it was to really, teach girls how to code and really inspire them and show them what technology can do. But there was a little bit of a few mishaps. And the thing is that if you create an association that doesn't have a strong foundation or a strong set of rules or a strong set of guidelines, then you can run into issues when there are disagreements. And so this first association was based a lot on trust, and we didn't really have this strong structure. And so when there became a disagreement on who can be on the board, and so we had one of the women on the board who she wanted to bring family members on, and we all disagreed with it. But when you don't have a strong structure of who can be on the board, what are the guidelines, how do you set it up, you end up having a lot of disagreements. And all of those disagreements will lead to your energy of fighting. And then where does the mission go? Nowhere. And so in order for that to kind of get more resolved, what we did is, we split and, they do it their way and we do it ours. And that way everyone's happy and you can focus right on the mission. But on top of that, it's, if you have these strong guidelines, then you also, if there is a disagreement, for example, for intellectual property. And so if you have a company, you're based on trust, right? You and the people that you just assume that this is all going to be okay. And it will until there's a disagreement. And then you go back to the foundation. And so when you have a strong foundation, you prevent all of this mishap. And that is what I learned with this association. And so we spent a lot of time really having all of the details and guidelines. What happens if somebody leaves? What happens if, there is a disagreement and things like that? Or, how do we call emergency meetings? Because all of those things in the end are extremely important. But when you're creating something new, everything is new and, you have this huge list of things to do. And then you figure out that the foundation is one of the most important things at the very end of the day. So yeah, that's what happened. But now it's all settled and we're all good to go now.
What I like, you said, it's still, you started with your mission and you still follow the same mission today. So that just sounds like a little detour, a learning experience to really get things right for the real setup. But you still followed your mission from day one, basically. So that really hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. And, it's I guess that's the driving thing about this is that, we really have our mission. And if you keep everybody on the team aligned and it's like, okay, this is our goal, then you can work all together simultaneously rather than, having all of these different disputes. So realigning and figuring that out is also a great way to help resolve any disputes.
Absolutely. I wonder, you're so energized when you talk about even, these days where things didn't go well. Where does your entrepreneurial drive to change things in the world and to start and push your own projects and initiatives, where does your entrepreneurial drive come from?
So I think there are some people that really sit there and they can see the problem and then they don't do anything about it. And for me, It was more that I had the capacity to do something. And, I had this skill set that I could really teach really well, and I could communicate with children. And I have this set. And so why not try to make that change happen? And just sitting around, it kind of lets you feel like you're not doing anything. And for me, as I could leave the world knowing that I made it a little bit better for the few girls that, I really touched. Yeah. And so that's where that kind of drive comes from.
Amazing. And then in 2021, you actually founded GirlsCodeToo together with two co-founders. So, of course, you, but then also David and Alicia. So you had taught kids how to code before, but now you wanted to teach girls especially. Why was that the right focus?
Oh, so I guess there's a little bit of my experience involved in this. And so when you teach boys and girls, there's a whole different environment that you have inside a classroom. And so boys are a lot more, they're a lot more daring. So when they have code and they just try it and it's all red, and they're just like, they raise their hand and they're like, hey, it doesn't work. Yeah. But if you have a girl who you don't have like a good set foundation, you just say, hey, try it out. And she feels a little insecure when it's all red. She doesn't want to try it. And so the thing is that we have a huge focus on, changing the way that we actually teach computer science. And then so you have it more that you give them a good baseline. You have them think of it like playtime. Get them used to all of the errors, the mistakes. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It's normal. But really, once you get a young girl, like even 8 years old, just over this little bump, it completely changes their game. And then their whole code can be read and they go, yeah. But it's like, if I can do it, it's like we can all do it together. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's this, if you really change the way that they think, then you can kind of just put that focus on them, and then they might like it a little bit better.
If we zoom out a bit, right? And if we look at how underrepresented, girls or women in tech are, how do you currently see that the current state of women in tech? Is that also something that is closely linked to your mission and your cause?
So for me, I'm lucky that now my team is a little bit more representing of women. And then so there's 3 of us women on the team. So the developers, for example. And the thing is, though, is that when you're only one woman in a team, let's say of 10 men, you can still feel that the jokes are not as representative for you. And it helps to just have somebody notice. I know it's not the most normal for everybody. But for example, if a girl just says, oh, you got a haircut, it looks really nice. But usually men don't notice those kind of things normally. And then so it's kind of nice to also have that kind of vibe inside the environment. But it's getting there. So slowly, I can see the difference and I can see a little bit more of the growth. But from other women that I talk to inside their environments, it's still not growing as nicely. So, step by step, we're making it happen. But, it's still gloomy.
There's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you've lived in the US, you now live in Switzerland. Do you notice any differences between the two countries when it comes to the state of women in tech comparing United States and Switzerland?
So practically, the thing is that before with GirlsCodeToo, so we were looking, okay, what other organizations are there? And inside the US, there is an organization called Girls Who Code. And they're very big, and so the idea was that at first we were going to go and say, hey, we bring you over here into Switzerland. And they said, no, we're not expanding and things like that. So, but we were also thinking, why isn't there one here for, a club for girls, like to create a community and having them interact and things like that. And so that's how it kind of got started, is that, over there that we already had it in the US, but then right now we didn't have it. So why not get it started?
Yeah, exactly. So would you say it's fair to say that Switzerland is lacking a bit behind with these kind of developments, maybe 3, 4, 5 years behind the US trends?
Yeah, I mean, so this organization has been around for quite a while. And then so I would say that there is. And the thing is that also, so in some rural areas, if you actually teach, for example, the kids in Zurich and with another canton, the thing is that if the schools didn't have exposure to computers, we've seen that we teach them at a different level. So for example, they don't know the basics of like how, I guess, Control Alt Delete, trying to figure out if the computers will go into like a managerial function or not. And the kids don't really know those types of things. And so it's more of teaching them, how to get used to the computers. And so we actually have a lot of collaborations.
And I also want to talk about your founding team, right? David and Alicia, where have you actually met your co-founders? How did that happen?
So David actually, he sent an email saying that he would like to volunteer. And he had said when I'd interviewed him, he said like, oh, hey, I would like to volunteer. Like, how can I help? And, it was, and he said, because I'm a male, it was a little bit hard for him to kind of say like, hey, I want to help out. And then, but he did. And I'm very, very grateful to this day that he's on our team and he's a tremendous help all the time. Amazing. And then for Alicia, she's my very, very good friend. And, we've known each other for quite a long time. And she has this mind to help things grow. And I thought she would be the perfect person for the team. That, we have this idea and then we have this plan. It's like, but how do we expand it? How do we make this happen? How do we make those connections? And she was really the glue to really helping us, grow and grow. So it
sounds like the perfect team.
It has been.
And together you set up GirlsCodeToo as a nonprofit. Why was the nonprofit setup the right one for you?
So practically for us, it was more of we wanted to do good. And it was at the end of the day, we weren't looking to, make money from this. And then so it was like we wanted to really try to make this community feeling. And in order to make this community feeling that we all help each other out, we really wanted to say, hey, this is not about the money. This is really about the mission. And so this nonprofit status was really to help propagate this idea.
Yeah. So it's in your DNA, in the legal setup, to really say, hey, we walk the talk.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also want to focus on what you actually offer and what you actually do. So what sort of guidance and support do you provide the girls?
Okay, so we have a few different steps. And then so, for example, we'll have introductory workshops that are very short and like short snippets of coding. So for example, you learn a little bit what JavaScript is, or, how do you build a website, or what is, cybersecurity, and how do you keep safe online? And then you have step 2, where it's the second pillar, where you're like, the girls are a little bit more interested. They'll spend a few more days. And so, we have like these workshops between 3 and 5 days that they will learn a specific skill. So at the end of it, they have a game to take home, or a website, or a mobile app.
Cool.
And, it really helps them grow. And then the third step is, let's say the girl's interested, she has a set of skills. How do we get that to the next level? How do you build a project and things like that? And so that's really guiding them from the very beginning, getting them interested to, having them, okay, let's learn the skill. And then how do you make this skill an actual like output of a product? And so that's like our 3 little hierarchies. But in between as well, it's really important to have this sense of self and empowerment. And I don't think that they teach that enough in schools. How do you learn how to be comfortable with your own voice when you ask a question? How do you make sure that, you don't feel like a little stupid for asking it? And so these are really important things that we're also integrating into our workshops. And so we have collaborators that, will help and things like that. So we're slowly getting there.
So on top of the coding skills, you also take away some real life skills, basically.
Exactly. And then one of the big things is that we want them to also ask questions. And so the thing is that if the more that you engage them, or you get to know them and kind of have these classes tailored to what is interesting for them, it's very important for their next steps as well.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
And your focus is on 8 to 18-year-old girls. Is it more difficult or very purposefully chosen by you to not go beyond or above 18 years?
So yes and no. So at 18, the reason that we kind of picked that was that, I guess they're practically going into university. And then so for them, that there's also, it's a different type of teaching and a different approach to learning and things like that. And then so that's why we stuck to 8 to 18 is because at this point, you're not really set on, what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And at this stage, we want to more inspire and kind of show you, okay, here are a range of things that you could learn. It's like, here, this is what you could possibly do. And our assumption was that at 18, you kind of already have like a little bit of an idea what path you want to take.
Right.
And so that's how that came about.
Is your goal after, they joined you and then they went through your program that they would then join a university and continue the education there? Is that sort of the expectation or not really?
No. So then there's actually a few things as well. So we work with a few collaborators that what we do is, for example, an apprenticeship program, which I think is underrated in the sense that, that we are not promoting it as much. And so women who, so I guess young girls who are applying to these apprenticeship programs, the numbers are super, super low. And so in that sense as well, they can also go down that route. But the other thing is that it doesn't have to be that the woman or the young girl has to go to university for this. It's more like they get comfortable with this idea of, technology and that it's not just, a male-dominated field. And there are a lot of creative things that you can do with this. And you could think that, fashion design is super creative, but also creating websites, is also, or creating like the designs of the mobile apps, things like that, kind of inspiring the different aspects of technology as well. So you don't have to go to university for it.
Perfect. I fully agree with that statement. If you look at your website, it's also obvious that there are all female instructors that actually, teach your courses. Is that something that you did intentionally or did it just happen, by accident?
So it's not intentional. But right now we actually do have some male instructors. We just haven't updated our website. But the thing is that for our male and female instructors, whenever we have a class, we always want a female instructor present because it serves as a mentor to the young girls, right? Somebody kind of to look up to or, to relate to. Yeah. And so I think it's really important to have that figure in there because what makes the girl want to do coding if there's only 2 male instructors, for example. So it's a kind of more of an inspiration, kind of like a hopeful inspiration that, you have somebody that can help you out later on.
And I can imagine that some of the teachers also serve as role models. And I think that's crucial to then see where you can go, after starting to learn how to code.
Exactly. And so before each of the classes, I ask the instructors to give them a little bit of a background about themselves. So it's mainly, okay, what are they studying? How did they get there? What do they like and what do they not like? Because the not like is also quite important, right? It's getting to know, okay, is this the thing for me? Because I'm not saying that every girl should be a coder.
Of course.
It's just that, let's open up the idea, the possibility of you doing it.
Absolutely. Some of your workshops sell for 150 Swiss francs, others for 395 Swiss francs. So I also wondered, there's sort of a pricing logic behind it. How did they come up with the pricing?
So practically, we want to just cover our costs. And so we don't make any money from the actual workshops that we host. And then we are mainly based on, donations and crowdfundings and corporate sponsorships and things like that. And that really helps keep the rest of it afloat. But the pricing is just based on, okay, how many hours are we teaching? And then what are the costs for it, such as the laptops or, the devices and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's like super low cost.
Yeah.
But that's important to be able to, pursue your mission and make it accessible.
Exactly. And then that was the thing is that there are private companies that do this, but they charge a lot more.
Right.
And then so, we are trying to reach that the price isn't the issue. And so we had once a workshop and they said, oh, it's like, oh, it was 50 francs. And then they said, oh, but is it 50 francs per class? And we said, no, it's 50 francs for the whole set of workshops. And they said, oh, that's really cheap. I was like, yes. But so then that money isn't an issue. And we wanted to make sure that that's the case.
Again, here, walking the talk, basically, right? So I also want to talk about challenges. And, you're set up as a nonprofit. You all have a day job, basically, next to doing what you do. And I wonder, is that sometimes a difficult situation, to balance your nonprofit work while still having a day job for you, in your case, as a front-end software engineer at Avalok?
So yes. And so if at first it's a dream come true, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to have a job and I'm going to also run this nonprofit. And the thing you don't realize is that you start to dedicate all of your nights and weekends to this. And because it's your passion project, you really start to give it your all. And then you start to realize that all of the things that you love start to kind of slowly go away and disappear because, nights, you schedule in the dinners with your friends and the rest of them are going to be meetings or then answering emails or then, on Saturday mornings, I was teaching the classes. And so, you slowly start to realize that you are not Superman and you cannot just, do everything all at once. Yeah. So it's been a huge challenge. But slowly I started to figure out, okay, like setting boundaries, for example, okay, at this time period, I'm not going to be working on anything anymore. And then, it just has to go on to the next day. And it's okay. Like it can go on to the next day and nobody's going to die. It's not heart surgery. So,
but I mean, at the same time, that can be a very intense additional stressor to your life, despite all the good things, that you, of course, get out of it, the impact that you have, etc. But that can also lead to a burnout eventually with all the stress that you put on top of your day job and that you sort of also create for yourself. Is that a topic that you have faced yourself?
Yes. This actually happened last year. And so it was an intense period. And so I think the thing is that you slowly start, it slowly starts at first. And so, you start to just, okay, it's fine. And then every hour of your day is scheduled from when you wake up to, when you go to sleep. And then, every eating time and then, picking up groceries, every errand is scheduled in. Yeah. And then what ends up happening is that you start to forget, okay, let's say going out to have date night or, going out to see friends or, doing something casual as watching a movie on the weekends. You start to give all of that up. And those are the, I guess, building blocks of what makes you you. And when you start to kind of take those building blocks away, so, family, you start to like spend less with, and then, the friends as well. And then you put all of this on one pillar and which is going to go into work. And then you start to feel like an imbalance inside your life. And then when you start to have this imbalance, then everything you do starts to become a chore. And even eating becomes a chore and sleeping becomes there's not enough time to go to sleep because then you have so many other things on your list. And then you can kind of, then every single day it's, you feel more and more fatigued and you feel more that it's the world is so heavy. And when you start to see all of this, you realize that you're in a space that it's not really quite right. And then you start to Google all of this. And then you figure out that you're in the whole burnout scenario where everything is, you messed up all of your life pillars and you put everything in one category. And even though you love it and it's your passion, it's still not enough because you've given up everything else inside your life. And so there's just this huge imbalance. And so this has taken me quite a while to, figure out. And even if you take a break, you go on a holiday with some friends for, I think it was 5 days, and I still couldn't stop talking about, what I have to do and things like that. Yeah. And you're still going at 100 miles an hour. And so it's quite an intense thing. But the first thing you have to kind of realize is, when you get to this stage is that you have to kind of realize that what is happening inside, what is bringing you happiness, what brings you happiness, and what's going on, because you can't just put all your eggs in one basket and be like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you have to kind of diversify your happiness a little bit. So, I think that kind of realizing, okay, when you start to feel tired, and when that the things that bring you happiness, when you do them and suddenly they disappear and you don't have happiness anymore, or it doesn't bring you as much and you still feel so weighed down, you're in a not so happy space. And then it's really, then you take a step back and be like, what is going on? What do I need to bring me happiness? And taking that step back. And it took me quite a lot of time enjoying boredom. And so boredom is the act of doing nothing.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done in
exactly.
that case, right?
And then, then suddenly, you kind of like, you have to start enjoying boredom. And then you can kind of, I guess, start to enjoy a little bit of life. And when you enjoy boredom, you also get the best ideas, because your brain is an empty slate. And so you can kind of think and be like, hey, look, I have this great idea. But if you're constantly hustling from A to B to C to D, you don't have time to think of great ideas.
I once read that. I don't know how the quote exactly went, but it was really like, the greatest ideas, they only come once you're bored, because then you have room to think. Your brain is rested and you're not in this emergency mode of, okay, next task. That's actually where the good stuff is hidden. So you need to give yourself time and room to uncover the good ideas that are somewhere hidden in your brain.
Completely agree. My friend says it's like the shower is also a great place.
Fair point.
So it's super important to have this sense of boredom, I think.
So you were talking about the symptoms of burnout, right? And I imagine if you're in the middle of that, it's super difficult to actually realize that this is happening to you, and maybe also to even just acknowledge it. So I'm really grateful that you are now looking back with us here and can sort of say, okay, this is how I see it now. To someone who might be in that situation without even realizing it, what are some tips or recommendations that you have for people who don't feel quite right, but it's hard for them to pinpoint it and to fully understand what's going on? How do you realize it, and what do you do once you realize it?
So practically, I think that if you kind of start to lose this sense of happiness, so let's say you like to go to the gym all the time, but going to the gym becomes a chore, and then you really lose that motivation. Or, let's say painting, for example, as well. Then I think that you can kind of take a step back and then try to see what's causing it. Because there's always a cause to, what's going through your mind during this, like, what's causing this unhappiness? And the other thing is that you should always schedule rest time too. And I don't think people do that enough. It's that, kind of acknowledge that you're only a human being, and that if you're in this burnout phase, and I know that, hustling from A to B to C to D it feels like the world to you. But if you literally take a step back, and then, if you're able to, kind of delegate it to somebody else and be like, this is a little bit too much for me, I just need to take a step back for a little bit. It helps a lot, because my team was really supportive, and I told them, this is how I'm feeling. I can't handle it anymore. And, just delegating and really reducing it and focusing on you just for, like, I think it was 2 weeks that I was already starting to feel a bit better, but it still is 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks is a lot of time for everything going chaotic. But if you're in the lucky position that you can delegate, and if you can't, then, prioritize what are the most important things and what are the most important things inside your life, because you need to find that balance of, like, okay, let's take a step back. What are the best things for you? Like, what are the best things that make you happy and sad? And then, just kind of just spread everything out and things, and it should work out, hopefully.
I know this is very personal, very individual, but you mentioned these different pillars or the different baskets, right? What are those for you? What are the different pillars that you now diversify and build your life up on?
So I practically have four, and it's practically family. So family is, a huge one for me, and also friends. That sense of community is really important because they are the backbones. But on top of that, then there's the passion in the work. What am I doing with my life?
Of course.
And the fourth one is, myself. And the thing is a lot of people don't acknowledge that one, but really, how do you improve, or how do you make yourself better, and things like that. And I noticed that if I don't even do that, for example, I stopped painting. And when you stop doing something that you love, it doesn't bring back anything to you at the end of the day as well. And, so those are the four things in my life that I really need to stay focused on. And, I to this day, I schedule them in. And so, that's what happens when you have a busy life. But, at least I never neglect any of them. I always set time for each of those categories.
Nice. So how do you organize that? Do you really put them on the calendar and say, today I paint for 1 hour from 7 to 8 in the evening, for example?
Yes, I do.
Sure. Yeah, that's
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it works for me. So I look at my calendar, and I actually plan, let's say, in a week in advance. I look at how my week's going to be next week, for example. What are my free days? Which ones am I going to spend with, friends? Which ones am I going to spend for myself? Which ones I'm going to spend family? And then passion projects. And then, I really schedule each of those in. And then you have 7 days in the week. So, one each week, one each day is pretty good. And then the rest of it, it's boredom days. And so, it really works out. I mean, that's personally for me. And then it just works. But if you schedule it in and then say, hey, nothing goes inside this slot, then you really can't say, hey, I'm going to go work right now.
Exactly.
I need to get it done. It's like, no, I have something scheduled in. I'm sorry.
Of course. Do you also have a hard cutoff time where you say, at this hour, I stop reading emails, or I just stop work in general?
Yes and no. I think it really depends on my day. And then, so let's say I had a slow morning, for example, then I will kind of push that down to at night. But I really try not to work right before bedtime. And then, so, I kind of leave myself this relaxation time right before, or else right before, if I work, then my mind is racing like crazy. And which is also bad that, you don't get that full night's rest or that relaxation, which can also lead, to some not nice mental states later.
Sure. In that regard, I also love that, to think about what is good for me and what could I optimize. And one thing that really helped me, I'm lucky to work with a lot of US customers. So usually I have more quiet mornings, so I don't need to get up that early. But to take the mornings or the first hours to myself, and there, go to the gym, go for a walk, whatever, and put myself first there before starting to work, that made a huge difference, because then you had already won the day, sort of. Yeah. And only then you start to work. Well, normally, we get up, we rush to work, then we're already stressed. In the evening, we come home, we're too tired to go to the gym or to do anything else. And then that's just a lot of frustration. But if you put yourself first, that made a huge difference by that little change.
I completely agree. It was like a colleague and we started going to the gym in the morning, and we figured out it is like this huge burst of energy, and you start off so, I guess, well-rounded as well. Exactly. Completely agree.
Yeah. And the last question on that topic, I saw you're wearing an Apple Watch, I think. Do you also track any metrics, on like health metrics where you say, I want to track my sleep or my resting heart rate, whatever comes to mind, to sort of track that state to see, am I doing well?
I actually track how many steps I take.
That's good.
I mean, that's practically the only thing that I've been tracking, just because it's more of a thing of I need to make. So it also tracks how much I stand up, which I think is completely, if it tells me I've been sitting for too long and I need to go stretch, completely, it's like it reminds me that my body is not meant to be just stationary. It's really important to really focus on, what are the body movements that are going to make it long lasting when I'm older as well. And so being in this stationary position all day is really bad. So the whole steps thing, if I didn't walk enough, and it will really tell me like, oh, hey, you haven't stood up for a while. But I've also discovered this breathe as well, where it will notify you, hey, it was like, take 1 minute to just focus on your breath. And it really, it's extremely relaxing as well. So highly recommend it if you haven't tried it.
Perfect. It's sometimes the little things that can make a big difference.
Yeah.
So continuing with the challenges, and by the way, thank you for being so open about the burnout topic. I think it's wonderful to just share what we experienced and what works, what didn't work, to learn from each other.
Yeah. And then I hope that, for everybody as well, it's that, kind of focus on yourself. And then, if you feel like that there is even the slightest chance of it, it's just really taking a step back and reflecting can do a lot. And, and then you kind of just move things around a bit in your schedule and see how it works.
Yeah, I love that. So the second challenge I want to talk about, from a nonprofit perspective, is the financial part or the business model part. So obviously you have to, some invoices to pay, you have operating costs that you need to cover, but at the same time, you don't really have a real business model behind it where you can say, hey, we want to make money with this and that offering. So how do you balance that, being a nonprofit, but still having to make some money to actually finance the operations?
And then so that has actually been one of our biggest challenges. And then so at first we were, thinking, oh, yeah, everything is going to be great and dandy. Everybody's volunteering. And so we're not going to have that many operating costs. And, but that's really, it's a very naive approach. And then so we really had to figure out, okay, we had a lot of talks of, okay, well, how are we going to structure this? How do we survive in the long term? What is the long-term goals and things like that? And so for right now, we've really figured out that, okay, we have these courses for let's say for schools, or we host our own workshops. And these ones, we have no, I guess we'll call it runway money. And then, but then you have other, for example, I guess donations or crowdfundings or corporate sponsors where they say, hey, like we would like this workshop, we'll pay this much amount if you host one for us. And for those ones, we have those as runway. And then so to kind of really fund the rest of the organization. And so from that perspective, we are like, okay, for right now, that's how we function, and it's been working great. And we're very happy.
That's a very fortunate, a good situation to be in, I would say.
And then so I guess the one downside is that, for example, we want to do more workshops in, let's say, robotics. And so we have 5 robots right now, and then we want to go have another, I guess, 10 or 20. And then so that we could have, like, instead of just a small class of robotics, we can have like parallel classes of robotics.
Right.
And then, but then the issue is then, it's like, okay, well, we have to figure out how do we finance it. And then so for us, it's like, okay, we look at how the next year is going to look, what kind of workshops we want to host, how much money are we going to need for it, and then what do we use to subsidize those workshops? Because since we don't ask the actual parents to go, or the schools to really pay for those workshops.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You always have to find creative ways to finance everything. Then the last challenge I want to talk about is basically the recruiting of participants, but also of talent to, do and teach the classes. How difficult is that for you? Because I can imagine after financing everything, you still need to have the people to bring everything together. And that's another big challenge to solve.
Yeah. So it's been a huge, that's been, I guess, our biggest challenge by far. And, kind of reaching the girls. And when you have all of these, I guess, girls that their parents enroll them, we're getting a certain demographic. And in order to make a huge difference is that we have, instead of the girls coming to us, we should be coming to the girls. Right. And so what we've one of our main goals is that we want to have been going to different public schools. And then, so in the next couple of years, we've actually have now a plan, and then it's in set that we're going to be in several public schools throughout the next few years. And so we're extremely excited. And we've seen that, when you have the girls that we go to the schools, they will actually send us an email back saying, hey, I was at this workshop at this school, and, I'm interested in this. And right now I'm mentoring one of those girls, and she did an amazing job on her Matura project. And, but it was just, she had written an email saying like, hey, I had this great idea after the workshop, and it's like, but I will kind of need help. I've never coded before. And it's really, but you can see that difference, that if you don't have parents that think that coding is a good skill to have, they're not going to enroll their kids in it. And then, but if you get to the kids first and then say, hey, here, this is something cool, just see if you like it, and then you can see, okay, this is how we actually make the difference. And so, but we've also seen, like, we really struggled on the whole, getting the participants as well, because it's really, you get a certain demographic, and, you can only reach a certain amount of people. And then, but then you, for example, in a rural area in Switzerland, you might not be able to reach them because our reach isn't that far. And so really, I guess, having collaborations throughout and being like, hey, we can go to this school, or parents being like, hey, let's go to this school, that really makes a big difference.
Yeah, that seems to be the perfect model for your setup.
Yeah.
Now, if we again zoom out a bit to a topic we already briefly touched upon, if we globally look, women account only for 16% of managers in the information technology industry. And besides teaching and encouraging girls to code, how else can we change this from your perspective and experience?
So I think that helping this, I guess, managers, so female managers getting into the next position, it is a gender neutral problem. So practically, you as a male or female can help another manager reach to the next potential. And, if she's a female and you say, hey, I want more female managers, then you can kind of figure out, okay, how can I help her get to the next step, right? It's really having this, I really love this sense of community where if you have a common goal saying, okay, we are not represented in higher up, C-level management positions, right? And so then how do we get actually women up there? And you, as an individual saying, hey, I can mentor her to get her up there, or, I can help her, create a plan. And with this, when you have you help accelerate this thing. And then so if we work as a team, then we can actually get there.
Yeah, it takes all of us to make it happen. Yeah.
And then so, if you have the possibility to mentor somebody or help them create a plan to get there, then, you're doing your job.
Absolutely. And if you look at the numbers, you have, with GirlsCodeToo, offered more than 100 coding workshops, 102 to be exact, with more than 500 attendants. And what have you planned for the next 12 months? Like, what are your biggest milestones for 2023 and beyond?
So right now we're actually doing a crowdfunding. And so our plans for next year is we've gotten amazing feedback on our robotics workshops. So we want to actually expand that. And we're hoping, when all goes to plan, that we'll start to have a coding, robotics coding team, and to help compete inside these Lego robotics competitions. Yeah. And then so that would be really cool. It's a dream. And then at the same time, we really want to focus on having a lot more workshops that are hands-on. And then so it's really a different way of learning, for example. So if you can kind of see, let's say, a slate of LEDs, and you're learning how to code, and then you can kind of, when you code it, and you can kind of see this light go up, and then when another light next to it goes up, then you program the other one to turn off. Yeah. You get this visual positive feedback. And it's really a different way of type of learning. And I think that, kind of giving it this approach is a different way. And so we're going to try this kind of really having this artistic field of, hey, look, why don't you code an image on the set of LEDs? And then, kind of showing coding can be creative, and that, it's also hands-on. You can visually see how it's happening. And then you have this positive reinforcement of like, okay, hey, I can do this. And then you see something pretty at the very end of it. That's where our focus is going to. So more of okay, hands-on robotics and hands-on LEDs. And so we're in the works of doing that. And so we'll see how that goes. Next year as well, we're hosting a mother-daughter workshop.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah. So we're going to try that. And we were brainstorming today about, what if we kind of had it where it was more like a paired programming session where the kid will tell the mom what to do and how they want it. And then they would switch, and then they would just keep switching where the mom would then tell the kid what to do. And then, it's kind of like, it's very empowering for a kid to kind of make their own decisions and be like, hey, this is how I want it, and things like that. And then so we're going to go try that and see how that goes next year.
I love your energy and passion when, you talk about the future. I hope people can hear that passion and the sparkling eyes about what you're about to build. So cool. So exciting.
It's very, very exciting. So we'll see how the next year goes. And we'll also start in various schools in the French side next year.
Wow.
And so we're really, really excited to do so.
Yeah.
So that's coming up, and then we're putting it out on the website soon. I think maybe February.
Amazing. Perfect. So, Lara, to wrap up today's conversation, I have some rapid fire questions for you. So I could either give you a simple question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in one sentence.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Switzerland or the United States? I know that's a mean one to start.
Difficult. So one sentence.
Ideally, let's see.
So Switzerland public transportation, U.S. small talk about with grocery store workers.
Perfect. All female team or mixed gender team?
Mixed gender, definitely.
Okay. If you hadn't gone with crowdfunding, would you choose bootstrapping or potentially going with a for-profit setup and VC money or something?
Bootstrapping for self-independence.
I like that. And for peace of mind, I guess.
Yeah.
What's your number one coding pet peeve?
Bad documentation and outdated documentation.
I think many people can relate to that.
It's horrible.
What would you tell 8-year-old Lara if you could?
Try as many activities as you possibly can, even though you suck at them.
I think that's a wonderful motivational sentence to end the conversation. Lara, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you. Lots of success and all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, and it's been an honor to be here.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.